You don't grab a player's jersey for 40 straight minutes, get cooked from the logo, and then run to social media to like posts about jumping her in the parking lot. But that is exactly what Tiffany Hayes just did. And the fallout has been absolutely brutal. Let's set the scene because what went down between the Indiana Fever and the Golden State Valkyries was not basketball. It was a public execution disguised as a defensive assignment. Tiffany Hayes spent the entire night grabbing, scratching, holding, raking, and clawing at Caitlin Clark. And by the end of it, Hayes still had nothing to show for it except scratch marks on her hands and a stat line that made her look like a traffic cone in sneakers. Clark finished with 22 points, 9 assists, 4 of 9 from 3, and shot 47% from the field. Hayes finished the night humiliated, frustrated, and about to make the worst decision of her professional career. Before we go any further, smash that like button and subscribe because the Tiffany Hayes meltdown that follows is the kind of WNBA chaos you do not want to miss. And we are dropping daily Caitlin Clark coverage every single day. It happened with about 5 minutes left in the second quarter. Hayes had already tried everything. She crowded Clark, Clark attacked the rim. She gave Clark space, Clark pulled up. She tried to body her, Clark drew the foul. In the first quarter alone, Clark either scored or assisted on 17 of Indiana's first 21 points. And almost all of it came directly against Hayes. Aaliyah Boston was getting clean touches in the paint. Kelsey Mitchell was getting open looks. Why? Because Tiffany Hayes had absolutely no idea how to guard Caitlin Clark without committing assault. So she just kept fouling. And fouling. And fouling. The tape is humiliating to watch if you are a Valkyries fan. Hayes is hanging on Clark's jersey like she is trying to stop a moving train with a piece of string. Clark mentioned in the postgame that she felt she was getting fouled on drives without seeing the calls. Watching it back, she was being generous. The contact was constant. The refs let half of it slide. And Clark still hung 22 and 9 on her. But here is where it stopped being a basketball game and turned into a personal vendetta. Hayes started talking. After Clark hit a tough bucket, Hayes got in her face. After Clark dropped a dime, Hayes screamed at the ref, demanding a foul that did not exist. Hayes put the big dog flex on after a contested make. Clark took it for a possession, then 2. Then on the very next trip down the floor, Clark blew past 2 defenders, finished through contact, turned around and said, "Where is my one?" The whole arena heard it. And from that moment on, you could see something switch in Caitlin Clark's eyes. She had decided. This game was no longer about the Valkyries. It was about ending Tiffany Hayes personally. The third quarter is when the demolition started. Clark hit an and one through contact to give Indiana the lead at 53-52. Gainbridge Fieldhouse was already deafening. Then came the moment that has been replayed about 40 million times across every platform. Clark crossed half court. Hayes was sliding back into her closeout. Clark looked her dead in the face from about 33 feet out, said something along the lines of you and me, and pulled up from the actual logo. Hayes had a hand right in her face. Clark drained it, just absolutely buried it. The crowd lost their minds. Clark stared Hayes down. Hayes stepped up to say something. Clark said something right back, and the refs had to physically get between them before it became a full WWE situation in the middle of the court. You do not talk trash to a player who just dropped a 33-footer in your face from the logo. That is just basic survival instinct. Tiffany Hayes apparently missed that memo. What happened in the fourth was somehow even more disrespectful. Clark drove the lane, hit a tough finish, and stuck out her tongue like Michael Jordan in 1997. Then on the very next possession, she pulled up from deep over Hayes again, drained it, held up 3 fingers as she was backpedaling, and basically moonwalked back on defense. There is video of her mouthing Yahoo. Yahoo. Not a chest thump, not a flex, a Yahoo. That is the kind of energy you only have when you have completely broken your opponent's spirit. With 2 minutes left, Clark complained about another no call and Hayes shouted from the bench area, "Tech her up, technical difficulties." Hayes was now reduced to being a courtside heckler in her own jersey. It was over. The game, the matchup, the whole concept of Tiffany Hayes as a perimeter defender. Done. Now here's the part that should have been the end of the story. The Fever won as a team. Aaliyah Boston finished with 20 points and 16 rebounds, completely controlling the glass on both ends, going 8 of 15 from the field. Kelsey Mitchell dropped 19. Clark spent her entire postgame presser crediting Boston for the defensive cleanup work and praising Mitchell's shooting. She talked about the officiating carefully, said she tries to focus on what she can control. Classy. Mature. The kind of postgame you give when you have just embarrassed someone on national television and you do not need to add a single extra word to make the point. But that wasn't the whole story. Because while Caitlin Clark was at the podium being a professional, Tiffany Hayes was at her own podium doing the exact opposite. Hayes walked up to a microphone after getting torched for 22 and 9 and told reporters that the refs called the game in Clark's favor. Just sit with that for a second. The woman who spent 40 minutes turning Clark's arms into a scratching post, who could not stop her with 2 hands, a forearm, and a prayer, looked the media in the eye and said Clark gets preferential treatment. She said if Clark did what Hayes did, Clark would never get to play games. She accused the league of giving Clark calls because of marketability. The calls follow the money, basically. The whole speech sounded rehearsed, like Hayes had been sitting on it for weeks. Like she walked into the arena that night already planning to say it, regardless of what happened in the game. The problem? The numbers do not back her up at all. Clark shot 47%. She went 4 of 9 from 3. Every single foul she drew connected to real, visible contact from Hayes or Janelle Salon on drives that the tape clearly shows. You cannot rake someone's arms on every possession and then act betrayed when a few of those rakes get whistled. The math just does not work. And honestly, if anything, Clark got fewer calls than she deserved. There were drives where she got mauled and the whistle stayed silent. So Hayes complaining about preferential treatment is the basketball equivalent of robbing a bank and then complaining the cops are racist for chasing you. Hold up. If you are still here, hit subscribe right now because what happened after Hayes left the podium is where this whole thing crossed a line that the WNBA has never seen crossed before. And if the league does nothing about it, we are in serious trouble. After her presser, Hayes pulled out her phone and got on Threads. For those who do not know, Threads is the Meta-owned social media app that has somehow become the unhinged basement of the internet. And Hayes was not on there debating defensive schemes or sharing a recipe. She was liking posts. Specifically, she was liking posts from fans that were openly threatening Caitlin Clark with physical violence. One fan posted something to the effect of, "Listen, I got some cousins we don't speak about that will ride at dawn upon request. Just let me know." That is, in plain English, an offer to organize a physical attack on another human being. Hayes' response? She replied, "That's real. That's real." A grown professional athlete employed by the WNBA responded to a thinly veiled threat against a fellow player by basically saying that's love right there. Other posts she engaged with along the same lines, all from fans offering to throw hands for tip, if she needed it. Hayes liked them. Hayes encouraged them. Hayes essentially put her name on them. Now think about this from the league's perspective. The WNBA is in the middle of the biggest growth period in its history. Ticket prices are at all-time highs, partly because Caitlin Clark sells out arenas in every single city. Television deals are exploding. The expansion teams are launching. And the single most marketable player in the league just had a player from an opposing team publicly co-sign threats of violence against her. That is not a fine. That is not a slap on the wrist. That is a situation that genuinely tests whether the league has any backbone at all. Because if Tiffany Hayes can endorse attacks on Caitlin Clark and keep her job, then frankly, nothing matters anymore. Any player can do anything to any other player and the league will look the other way as long as the spreadsheet numbers go up. And here's the part Hayes was not counting on. The screenshots went everywhere. Within hours, the entire internet had her likes archived, screen recorded, and reposted to every platform that exists. There is no walking it back. She cannot claim her account was hacked because she was still actively posting from it. She cannot claim she did not see what she was liking because she literally replied to the post with, "That's real." The receipts are permanent. And the WNBA Players Association, the league office, and Indiana Fever ownership are all now in a position where doing nothing looks worse than doing something. Stephanie White, the Fever head coach, has reportedly been involved in conversations with the league office about player safety protocols specifically because of incidents like this. The Fever organization has been protective of Clark from day one, and rightfully so, because the targeting has been constant since her rookie year. What makes this whole situation even more bizarre is the context. Clark has been navigating an injury-shortened stretch this season, and the Fever have been carefully managing her workload to keep her healthy for the games that matter most. Every minute she is on the floor is precious. Sophie Cunningham, who has played the enforcer role for the Fever since her trade from Phoenix, has been vocal about protecting Clark from the kind of cheap stuff that Hayes was pulling all night. Cunningham has thrown elbows, stared down opposing benches, and made it very clear that anyone who tries to physically intimidate Clark is going to have a problem. And honestly, watching the tape of the Valkyries game, you wonder where Cunningham was when Hayes was draping herself across Clark's jersey on every possession. Because if Sophie had been on the floor during some of those Hayes muggings, the response would have been immediate. The bigger conversation this opens up is about the line between competitive trash talk and something darker. Trash talk is part of basketball. Hand-checking, jostling, getting in someone's face after a bucket, all of it is part of the sport. Hayes talking smack on the court is totally fine. Hayes getting cooked from the logo and then trying to fight Clark verbally at half court is funny, even if it is embarrassing for her. But endorsing fan threats? Liking posts that openly discuss organizing violence against a fellow player? That is not basketball. That is a line you cannot uncross. And the fact that Hayes did it within hours of losing a basketball game tells you everything about her emotional state. She was humiliated. She walked off that floor with scratch marks on her hands, 22 points hung on her, and a viral Logo 3 replaying on every highlight show in America. And instead of taking the loss like a professional, she went home and tried to put a target on the back of the player who beat her. So what happens now? The league is going to have to issue some kind of response. A fine at minimum. A suspension would be the appropriate move given the severity of what was endorsed. And the longer the WNBA office stays silent, the worse this looks for the league as a whole. Because make no mistake, every single player in this league is watching to see what the consequences are. If Hayes gets a $5,000 slap on the wrist, the message is clear. Open season on the league's biggest star. If Hayes gets suspended for multiple games, the message is also clear. You cannot endorse violence against another player and keep playing. There is no middle ground here. And for Caitlin Clark, the response has been exactly what you would expect. Silence, class, focus. She has not addressed the Threads situation publicly. She has not posted anything in response. She has not subtweeted, subthreaded, or made a single passive-aggressive Instagram story. Because she does not have to. She already won the game. She already hit the Logo 3. She already moonwalked back on defense. She has nothing to prove and nothing to gain by feeding the fire. The smartest people in any fight are the ones who do not need to throw the last punch because they already know they landed the first 10. Clark is operating at that level now, and Tiffany Hayes is operating at the level of a player who got embarrassed on national television and then went home and did the dumbest thing she could possibly do. If the WNBA does not act decisively here, the precedent it sets is going to haunt the league for years. You cannot grow into a mainstream sport while letting your players co-sign threats against the biggest star you have. It just does not work. The NBA would never let this slide. The NFL would never let this slide. Major League Baseball would never let this slide. And the WNBA, in the middle of its biggest commercial moment ever, cannot afford to be the league that does. Drop a comment below and tell us what you think the punishment should be. Should Tiffany Hayes get fined? Suspended? Cut entirely? Should the league finally take player safety seriously? And while you are down there, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for daily WNBA drama. Because this Hayes situation is just getting started, and we are going to be on top of every twist as it develops. The throne of WNBA chaos has spoken. Catch you in the next one.